Let's move to our next topic, that is finally block. The question is, what is finally block? Finally block is a block which contain the piece of code that you want to execute in every single condition. Irrespective of your code is throwing exception or your code is not throwing any exception, in both of the cases you want to execute a piece of code, then that piece of code you will always define by the finally block. Finally block is a block that you will define along with the try block or try catch block. Okay. And as I told you, whether your code is throwing exception from the try block and then that exception will be catch inside the catch block, or if even it is not able to catch in catch block, then also in every single use case finally block is a block that is going to execute, whether try is executing or whether catch is executing or whether both get abnormally terminates. In every single case finally block is going to execute. Now the question is, what is the real-time example of the code that you must have to define by using finally block? One of the good example is closing database connections. Okay, if you have some certain script which is closing the database connection, that closing database connection operation must be performed irrespective of queries executed successfully or queries throwing exception. In both of the cases, in the end, connections must be closed. Okay, and for that reason you will define that code inside the finally block, because if you will define closing connection code inside the try block and in case exception will be thrown, then closing connection will not get execute. Okay, but you want to make sure that closing connection must be execute, so for that type of use cases you will use finally block. Similarly, you can use finally block to define some code that is performing closing operations on any external resources, or else if you want to perform some cleanup operations, there also you will use finally block. Okay, now the next questions related to finally block that frequently asked is there any use case when finally will not get execute? Yes, it is also possible to terminate the code even without executing the finally block. And that is only possible by executing system.exit method. Whenever system.exit method get execute, it immediately terminates the code. Okay, and you need to define the calling of system.exit method in certain use cases when you want to abnormally terminate the code in certain condition. Okay, even it will not give the chance to execute finally block, and that's why we can say that if exit get execute, it will not even allow to execute finally block. Let's see the example of finally block here. I have a test.txt file defined inside a resource folder directory here, and this program is mainly going to read this file line by line and going to print each line. Okay, so that's what I am doing here. I am first instantiating buffer reader object. In here I am creating file reader object and mapping or connecting my file reader object with the file reference. Okay, and then after I'm start reading the file line by line. It will keep reading the file line by line unless until it will not reach to end point. Once the file will be finished, then it will return here null, and then this condition will be false and while loop will get terminate. Till then it will keep reading the file and it will print line by line. Okay, this piece of code I am putting inside my try block, and here as I told you I am making connection with my resource file. Okay, from where I'm reading the data. So in case if any exception occur during the execution of try block, catch will get execute and will print the message of the exception. Okay, but in case if everything goes good and nothing goes wrong there, then finally block get execute. Okay, it's first validating whether reader is holding the reference of buffer reader object. If it is holding reference, then it is going to close the connection with my resource directory, with this resource directory. Okay, and then in case if during the closing operation any exception occur, then again I am catching it. So you can define try catch block inside finally block as well if you have multiple line of code and you are expecting some exception there as well. Okay, because reader close method throws checked exception, and as you guys already know, checked exceptions must be handled. So if I even don't use any try catch handler here, then I have to further forward the exception forcefully by using throws keyword, or else I have to use try catch block to handle that exception. That's why I'm using this try catch block here to define close method inside my finally block. Anyways, it doesn't make any difference. You can have try catch block inside finally block. Finally is a block that is going to execute in every single condition. So it doesn't matter whether your code is throwing exception, tries executing or not executing, catch is executing or not executing, in every single condition this finally block is going to execute, and it is going to close the connections with the external resource. For those type of operations we need to use finally block.